I kind of thought about some of this too, and it's not just reading charts. So week one, with the recap week, I showed you 4 scales, right? The major scale, the Mixolydian scale, the Lydian dominant scale, and the Spanish Phrygian scale as I learned it. And I kind of showed you all the different chords, whether they were like a flat 6 chord or a 3 chord, dominant. So in like the key of C, it'd be like an E7, right? And I kind of showed you how to just plug those scales in to start making music, right? Now, obviously, too, you kind of need to definitely learn, the different positions, and I recommend like the cage system and all that for that. But it's a good intro and to kind of get you into jazz land, right? So this week there'll be a bit of talking here, but there's different ways. The word nomenclature, which is just different ways to describe music, right? Once you get used to this, it's not as confusing, right? But like I said, I think Chris already has pulled up. There's there's kind of a chart here that I put together, right? So let's just start. Like there's major chords, there's major 7, and then sometimes you'll see like a triangle or whatever, right? If you've ever wondered what that means, all it is just a shorthand to write major 7 than writing MAJ7, right? But it seems like there's a few different ways that are very common that you'll just get used to seeing all the time, right? So if we just start from there, right? Also, too, in this course or this session, I'm going to kind of show you like some cool ways just to play some like 2/5s, because obviously, if you're in here and you like jazz, or you're new to it or advanced, you've definitely heard that term. It's definitely associated with jazz. You got to learn a bunch of 2/5 licks or 2/5 kind of chords, right? And that is true to an extent. I would definitely say it's more than that, but I'm going to show you a couple cool ways, then we're going to kind of go through some charts, and I think you'll find it really useful. All right, so looking at major chords, right? Now, let's just start here, C, right? I see this every year. I was mentioning last week, Christmas tunes. People will throw out charts. You're on kind of a jazz gig, all the Christmas songs are pretty jazzy, right? They're hard. If you don't know the melody, sometimes, feel like a fool, at least I do. I mean, at this point, I know a lot of the melodies, but, they're just so memorable, right? But you also see so many different styles of charts, right? Sometimes with all kinds of great detail, and sometimes with not, and I see a lot of those too. So always point here, and, why I kind of put this in here, use your ears. If you're playing, Frosty the Snowman or something, or Rudolph, if you can use the basic chords, but if you're kind of in the setting, of jazz, and it just says C, you got your C6s, your C major 7s, and all that, and like I said, just always use your ear with that. Here's another thing: just because it's on a chart does not mean it's correct, and that comes with experience too. But I mean, to this day, I see stuff all the time, and I'm just like, that's not right, and I don't even discuss it unless it's like a studio session or something, and it has to be, but you just kind of learn to get by, so it's good being able to read, whether it's music, charts, whatever, that's great. But also you got to use your ears, because like I said, you're going to come across things. We're humans. We make mistakes, right? So just be aware of that. So with major chords, right, and a lot of us have seen this, obviously you got your straight up C, meat and potatoes, right? Then you have a major 7 or the triangle. That's all that means, right? It's got the, very jazz sounding. A bunch of different ways to play it. Right, going back to Christmas. Right on top. Right, like I said, a bunch of ways to play it, but it's that sound, and you want to get used to hearing that. It's nice when you can look at a chart and like those kind of voicings pop in your head, right? You also got like your C6, C6-9. I said this in the first week too. Anytime you can like put some sort of musical, like whether it's a phrase or an interval or a chord, to kind of a song or something, that helps. Just with getting that sound, and like a C6, here's a C6. This is a great version, right? Or right here. Use them all the time. So yeah, like that, I always associate that with like Western swing, just good old, nice easy swing kind of stuff. Great voicing. So is that, but that's a a lot more jazzy. And then like I said, you got your major nines, and there's that. I mean, I love like a major ninth. It seems like there's lots of bossa nova kind of tunes. It's kind of got that cool sound. It's got that ninth in it, right? And then your 9/13s, which is like something like that, right? So those are the, your, like I said, it doesn't really cover, I mean, it's covering a lot, but these are some common things that I see all the time. That's kind of how I put this together. Minor chords. You got your standard C minor, or the C slash, right? That means minor. C minor 7, right? Sometimes you'll see a C minor 6. C minor 6 is, that's not really, in any sort of, the way I taught last week, that would kind of have another scale on its own. We won't get into that really right now, but C minor 11, right? Cool chord. That always kind of reminds me of more of a modern, stuff like that. So yeah, those are kind of your minor. Or you'll see, like, instead of C minor 11, you'll see C minor 7 sus, right? Sus means suspended, meaning it's not the third, it's the fourth. It's a half step up. Then you got your minor major chords, right? Which is the James Bond chord. Right, that kind of stuff. We've all heard this, like if it was, say, like, My Funny Valentine or something, Is if you use a straight minor chord to a minor major, right? There's the the very ambiguous minor 7th. Went over that voicing a couple weeks ago. It's great voicing. And like I said, here's your sus on there. That could even make it cooler, And then your minor 6. Why that sounds so cool is because you have that line in the middle walking down. Like I said, look, guys, you don't have to know every chord in the world or anything, but the more that you know, the better you are. I mean, even like when I did that and put the sus on top, right? If you like arpeggiated or something. Right? It sounds cool. Yeah, so then you have, moving on with chords, you have your dominant chords, right? Which are, your secondary dominants. We went over that a lot in week 1. Like, what do you do if you're in C, and you remember, like I did the example where it's an A flat 7. That's a secondary dominant, right? That's where you did the Lydian move. But you see these all the time, too. Like, you see, like, a C ninth, right? Like I said, C, it's the funky kind of sound, Like I always just, for some reason, just associate that with, like James Brown, Prince, So like ninths and C7s are great for that. C13, right? So what those are, when you see a 13 or whatever, remember your meat and potatoes of a chord is a root, a third, a fifth, 7th, and then you have everything in between, which is 2, 4, and 6, also known as upper extensions, which are called 9, 11, and 13. We're not really going to get into that today, but sometimes it can get kind of tricky, like if you look at the bottom of B flat 7, 13, right? So that's a B flat chord, but where it can get really hairy, and like the more you do it, the better you get at it. You see it, and you're fine, but it's like, what if it's a B flat 7, flat 13, flat 9? It's like, whoa, it's a lot. I know, and I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but that's And we're almost done here, but that also goes to my next point, which I'll get to in a second. But you have your augmented chords, right? Augmented. You ever seen the plus sign? That means augmented, or you'll see AUG. C7, you'll see a sharp 5. That's what it is. It's extended 5. Cool chord. Then you got your half diminished and your diminished, right? So, especially you guys that know me and hear with jam play, sometimes it's hard to do the symbol. I just say C minor 7, like if it was a C half diminished chord. You can call it a C half diminished or a C minor 7 flat 5. Same thing, just different way to say it. If I'm moving fast right in a chart, I'm going to do, you can see the symbol as I have on the syllabus here, the circle with the slash through it. That's half diminished. If it's a full circle, that's diminished, right? Completely different animal. Like a diminished chord will run, that's what's so nice, especially on guitar, every minor third or every 3 frets. Right? So, like a minor blues, like if you like gypsy jazz, stuff like that, right? Say we're in C minor playing a blues, and then we go to the 5 chord, right? That sound, it's great. It's super easy to do on a guitar. Cool sound, But like I said, different than a half diminished. That's a full diminished, which generally is some sort of dominant chord in disguise, which I'll explain next week. So come on back. But yeah, okay. So that's a lot of information, right? I know it is. Like I said, learn by doing. Just look at charts. Like you just, go through a real book or a Great American Songbook, and you'll see all different ways. And like I said, at first it's kind of like, what's that? But you'll get used to it. Now here's the other thing, right? Is when in doubt, leave it out, which I think you guys can see, and if you read that, and that's the truth. Now, there's definitely been all kinds of situations that, like I said, sometimes you got to take all this stuff with a grain of sand and sort of figure it out how you want to, right? Like I said that last week, like there's, 3 different guys are going to say it different. You might pick a piece from each person. But whatever works to make it click with you, more power to you. But, like if, say you're on a big band gig or something, there's probably going to be some cool voicings that you're supposed to actually play because they fit within the arrangement, right? But also, like, just coming from a real world, practical, hey, $100, $200, whatever, go do this jazz gig. If everybody's not played together and stuff, right? Always leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out, because jazz is such an improvisational music, right? And that's why I say also to use your ears, and sometimes, like, I've been on a ton of gigs and, like, the chart is weird, or, like, sometimes tunes are regional too, guys. Like, in Nashville here, like, we play stuff that, you go across the country or something, like, I have friends in LA, or, and they play, like, kind of different chords, and they're like nuances, they fit the melody. Like I said, the more you do it, the better you get at, hearing the different versions, but it does happen. And sometimes, when in doubt, leave it out. So, like, practical experience is, like, if I see the tune, it's got, like, all these weird chords, I'm just going to play the meat and potatoes of it, right? The roots, the thirds, the fifths, the sevenths. The appropriate ones, if it's a dominant chord, I'm not going to play a major seventh on it. That's just wrong. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. Now, I will say probably 90% of the time, I'm leaving things out. Now, there's definitely guys I work with a lot. I kind of know what they like, what scales they go for and stuff. But, that's... You can't go wrong with just playing the meat and potatoes. Because the thing is if there's no color notes in there, right? For the soloist, that gives them a ton of, options to do whatever. Because if they're hearing, like, oh, this guy is definitely playing this kind of chord, that's where it can kind of get, the rubs will happen and things can be a little bit funny. Okay. So, with that being said, let's talk about form, right? Now, a lot of tunes are AABA form, a very common form. 32 bars, 8 bars A, second A, B, the bridge section, and then the A out. A lot of tunes are like that. So get used to that. Like when I started, I used to do something funny. I used to always stop after the bridge. I don't know why, but I did. And people would be like, no, you have to keep going. Like you have 8 more bars to solo over. Don't know why I did it, but I did. But get used to that. I mean, I'm on a gig all the time, and like sometimes it's just stuff like this where I might not know the tune and say there isn't a chart, right? But somebody will say like, oh well, it's like this. It's kind of has this bridge, AABA. So get used to knowing those terms. Not all tunes are like that. There's definitely some weird ones out there. In my experience, and a lot of folks I work with and stuff, same thing. If it's a tricky form, there's there's ABC. Like if you ever heard the tune Tico Tico, and then it goes major, and then it goes major again, but in the key of A, right? So it goes from A minor to C to A major. The thing is sometimes guys switch all those up. So that's like stuff you got to talk about, hopefully if the chart's there. But sometimes that you'll see that too, like where there'll be a repeat and then somebody's moving on to the next section, meaning the chart is maybe not always right. So okay, that sort of covers our chords. Now, Chris, if you could, let's bring up example 3. And let's do the chord choices first, not the actual chart. I'm going to pull it up too. Okay. So like I said, what this, sometimes when you're reading, and trying to pay attention, trying to keep up with the band or whatever, right? Kind of putting this session together, I was like, oh, okay, well, here's some cool, some good ways to keep you moving that you don't really have to think about too much, which I think is great, because that way, if you know just like these little, these chord movements and stuff, you can kind of be more aware of what's around you and not just be completely glued to the chart, right? So if you go to the bottom of example 3, right? This is going back to the 2-5-1 thing I was talking about. You have D minor, right? The last 2 chords, and I have them voiced out, in tab and notation. And you have D minor and you have G7. Now, like I said, we're going to come across this a couple times through these charts, so this is why I'm starting with this. Now, there's a bunch of ways. Like last week, I showed you guys that. That's a great voicing for D minor, right? And then we went to this, to G7. Now the thing is with these chords too, I'm all about the guide fingers, right? And what is a guide finger? Just to recap. A guide finger is this finger right here, the 3rd one, right? It doesn't move from that string. It just guides me down a fret, and then I adjust accordingly to make the G7. Now why is that important? Well, because it's sort of like it's a visual cue, but also, almost it's a physical one too. You can feel it. You know that your finger's not moving. It's also important, like I said, if you get you make good habits out of that with muscle memory and stuff. You just don't have to think about it once you get used to it. Now also, like, these are kinds of things to practice too. Like, guys, if you want to build your muscle memory with chords and all that, Chris, yes. Bottom of the page, last 2 chords. By doing that, like I said, that's what I was going to say. Just, these are kinds of things. Wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, do this for like 3 minutes, and you'll get it, like, it takes a little time. Like if you're watching TV, mute when the commercials come on. Do that a few minutes, and then you'll have them under your fingers fairly quickly. Okay, so going back to this D minor, I love this, and like I said, it's super easy to move around, especially in the middle 4 strings. And the movement's great. You don't have to really a whole lot to think about, right? So the D minor, right? It's going to be, this is what it looks like. Or hold on, wait. I'm using the wrong one there. Whoops. All right, going back a step. Sorry, guys. Just... So this example, it should be, Chris, it should be the one with it's the first chord on the page is C6-9. Either way, so like I said, if we start at the bottom of that page, I'm going to show you two ways, really. And this is what I showed you last week as well. But you have a D minor like that, right? So second finger, 5th fret, 5th string, first finger, 3rd fret, 4th string, third finger, 5th fret, 3rd string, and then pinky on the 6th fret of the 2nd string, the B string, right? So that to that, right? And then your G7 is just 1st and 2nd. I kind of kill the 5th string with my 1st finger there, right? And then you have a G, 3rd fret, 4th string right there with your 2nd, and then your 3rd right there on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, right? Now here's what's also cool, like say you're playing really fast, right? And you're trying to read, but it's essentially the chart is like a cycle of 2 5s or something. That's where it also is your best friend, because there's very minimal movement. Right? And that kind of stuff happens all the time in tunes, right? So like I said, that's a really good 2-5 usage of a 2-5. So Chris, if you want to move up to the top of that page, let's go to the 3rd line of chords that are tabbed out. So the 3rd line, you'd have a C6, a D minor 7, if we're there. And this is another way, and this is what I was going to show you earlier, is if you do your 5th, that's what it looks like, right? But another great voicing. If you guys are familiar with like a G, 7 sus, like that, it's essentially the same thing, but all you're doing is I'm just playing the inside 4 strings, right? Now, same thing, we're going back to this G7th, right? But I'm using the 4th finger as a guide there, right? So so and then it's 3rd finger on 5th fret, 5th string, and then you have 1st finger on the 3rd fret, 4th string, and then your pinky on the 5th fret of the 3rd string, and then what I do is I kind of do like a mini bar right there, and that's where my 3rd fret, 2nd string, right? At first, I remember when I learned this chord, it was kind of a little bit weird, but now, it's like my go-to. And then all you do is you slide back with your pinky there, right? And then you have your G7. So what you're doing is, here's option, the first option, where you're using the 3rd finger as the guide finger, right? Like I said, they're both D minor 7s, but it's the way they're voiced, and they sound different. And like I said, especially with jazz stuff, guys, you want to get used to using these voicings. Like, and I remember I mentioned like how some things just sound dorky, like it's just not as hip sounding, right? So get used to those kinds of things in terms of voicings, right? Okay, so like I said, that covers kind of your major 2-5-1. Now, this is only one key, right? I would... you hear people say this all the time, but it's like, oh, you should learn, a bunch of tunes and a bunch of different keys. That is true. Because right here, if you master this, you'll be really good in C, but then, what if there's a tune in E flat? So, you really want to, study your fretboard and kind of make sure you know your voicings and stuff. Another good way to do that is obviously just picking out different charts and looking at it, but you just run them in fourths or fifths or something, so if this is a 2-5-1 in C, right, then do one in F or something, B flat, E flat. Like I said, that's a good way to practice this stuff. Okay, so with that being said, now let's go to chart example 2 of the reading charts, Chris. So here's the actual chart, right? Now, if anybody, if you guys play any real book tunes, down to the font, this is classic what they would look like, right? Now, obviously, if it's in the real book, you're going to have your melody, which is great as well. But you see a lot of this kind of stuff as well, right? So, like, going back, example 3, it's labeled example 3 reading charts. Oh, sorry. So your first chord is C6-9. So like I said, very well this chart could say C, or it could say C6, it could say C major 7, C6-9. This is what I'm saying is the more that you get used to seeing this kind of stuff, it really doesn't faze you, right? So that's a good option. Right now, also, let's talk about form, right? This is, you have AA, B, and then generally on a chart like this, sometimes you won't even see the other A. But you can see right at the top it says AABA, right? They just, I think probably originally somebody did it by hand, and that's just an easy way to let you know the form, right? So you could see first A, take your first ending, right? Second A, take your second B section, and then another A section, right? One more time, which would be like the first ending or something. Like I said, just because it says C6-9 doesn't mean you have to use C6-9, right? You can use C6, a bunch of different ones. But let's do C6-9 here, right? So let's just stick here, but this is a great voicing. And you can see in the supplemental material after this session goes live, you can look at some different chords, but let's just stay on the chart for a minute. Right, so C6-9, second finger, third fret, and then what you do is you have like a 2-finger or a 2-string bar on the second fret of the third and or the fourth and the third string, and then you have another mini bar underneath on the third fret, but the second and the first string. Great chord, like I said, very useful. Kind of reminds me of Western Swing, right? So you have 2 bars of that. Obviously, you have your repeat sign next after that. A lot of times these charts, you have your title. It's going to tell you medium swing, whatever. Let whoever count it off if you need to count it off. We're also going to do intros and outros next week, so that will help with. That happens all the time. I'm on a gig. Somebody says, "Well, give me an intro." So I'm going to show you kind of some cool practical ways that are great to kick off a tune, with tempo and everything. But yeah, so we got a medium swing, so you'd have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, C6-9. All right, now here's another practical way, right? And like I said, this is also in the supplemental material, but you're going C to a B flat to an A7, right? So what I like to do in this instance, and like I said, you kind of get used to the 5th string down and then the ones from 6 down. That work really well, right? So you can do a C6 up here, right? Now, also with reading charts, I will say, always, you might be like, oh, this is impossible at first. And it is a little tricky, but you like a lot of times I'll sort of scan a chart really fast and be like, okay, what are like some voicings that are just I can use, and that's why also your muscle memory helps once you get more used to them. But there's a couple of voicings, and like I said, if this is in the supplemental material as well, but I'm just gonna show them to you real quick, right? So what I'm doing though is I'm going, okay, here's my C6-9, that's a great chord. But then I have a B flat, and it's like, well, I can use this B flat, but I know this one sounds cooler, right? Definitely. Not near as dorky, like I said. And then you're going to A7, right? So, like I said, I try to be smart about this. It takes a little time to get under your fingers, but I'll jump up here to a C6, right? Now, sometimes I'll just start like that, and then you can just do that whole line all the way down. Right, but check this out. So you can go like start with your C6-9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Right now, also when you see two chords in a bar like that, that generally means 2 beats per chord. If it didn't, you'll see some sort of rhythmic figure above. Sometimes with charts too, definitely in number charts like Nashville Number System, but also like I'll see letters like this that are hand drawn. And another way to let people know that C and B flat are 2 beats apiece is you draw a line under it. That, or you have your, like I said, your rhythmic figures above. Like I said, you start to see all the different ways. You kind of just put it together. But, like I said, this is a great choice, right? Now, like I said from the get-go, C. It's like, well, why doesn't it say C6 or C major 7th, right? This is a medium swing tune, though. So that's important to know. You don't just have to play C. And like I said, if you start like with a C6-9, it just sounds kind of funny, you know? So, like I said, I come across it all the time. But use something cooler, especially like you already know you're in a jazz tune. You know, say the drummer's kicking it off and it's nice and swinging. You know, people are going to look at you funny if you're just that. But anyways, the C6 up here, another fantastic chord. I got my second finger on the 8th fret of the 6th string. I got my first finger on the 7th fret of the 4th string. I have my pinky on the 9th fret of the 3rd string. And I have my 3rd finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. I'm also choking the 5th string with my 2nd finger there. You don't want that, right? So like I said, the beauty of the guide finger, right? Think about how handy this is if you're reading this chart for the first time, right? It's like, okay, well, I know my C6-9, but then you jump up here to B flat, right? Or sorry, to C6, and then jump down 2. Here's the thing, right? My pinky finger stays there, right? And then I kind of just swap these around. Like I said, it takes a little practice, kind of thing I recommend. You know, if you're watching the nightly news or something, just commercial, just just repeating it like that a few times, and you're good. But right, so C6, slide down, guide finger, B flat 7, and this is just 7 I showed earlier, right? So first, second, and pinky, right? And then slide back to your A7th, right? And that's just same exact shape, just moving down, right? So altogether you'd have, right? You can look at that. Once you get those under your hands, they're great, right? Now, and a lot of us know this, D7th, just like that, right? Now, you're going to be tempted. You learn all kinds of chords, right? And harmony and stuff with jazz. And, you're going to want to put, like, flat 9s and 9s and stuff in there, right? And that can be cool. The thing is, though, like I said, just to be wise about it, if I had never played this tune and I'm, playing with some guys I've never played with or whatever, I'm probably just going to stick with the meat and potatoes. trios, the roots, the thirds, and the sevenths, or the fifths and the sevenths, right? So that's a great chord, D7th, right? It leaves everything out when that guy goes to take a solo where you don't make him sound bad, and that's what it's all about. Same thing with the guide finger here to your G7th like that, right? So like I said, guys, this stuff is all over the place. I mean, my pinky never left that entire line down, right? Say we're just going to start from the beginning with C6. So you got 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Pinky still just keeps moving down, never leaves that string. I go back to... Look at, we still have not left the pinky, right? Like I said, guys, you get used to doing that, and it's awesome. So, and that covers both your A sections. Pinky still not leaving. C. Now one of the, I would just keep it consistent. Here's the other thing too, is like, it's good to know to have options, right? Absolutely, all the time. But you're moving fast, you're trying to read this, stick with one that's super easy, right? Let's see here. So let's move on to the B section, and then we're going to move on to the minor 2-5. Okay, so this... So we're on the B section of the tune, right? F. It says F. Do you play just a regular F? You can. Like I said, do something cooler, right? Now, I find just already kind of being down in this register, say we walked all the way down, D7, going back to the last end of the A sections, C, C7th, right? So one good choice would be an F6-9 like that, right? So just like this, but up in F territory. Like I said, knowing your cage system and all that helps a lot because you're able to see that information quickly, right? Now, another one that I find very useful, especially if I'm in the key of F, the bridge goes to an F, like in this case. I like this chord right here, which is kind of a gypsy chord. What it is it's an F6th with the fifth in the bass, or the C, right? So kind of crunching there a little bit, but once you get used to it, it's a great chord. Second finger and third finger on the third fret of the fifth and fourth string, first finger on the second fret of the third string, and then pinky on the third fret of the second string, right? Like I said, the thing is like, you can do that too, the F major 7th, and that's in the material as well, guys, for all the chords, and they're all written out if you have any questions. And if anybody has any questions so far, just let me know. But like I said, it's a great choice, right? And like I said, with this chorus, that's why I'm showing you the guide finger and some of these chord choices. Is you get used to them, and then you start to play. Like I said, just dive in and look at some. I challenge you. What I would do is take, look at this chart and then just go through the book and then find some other tunes in C, and just kind of see how you can work around. Right, so there's your, like I said, F6th. It's great. A7th, just like that, right? Now, like I said, I'm always sort of thinking ahead. So then you can use your D minor 7th like that again, right? Guide finger to there. G7th, right? There's that. So that's all guide finger, right? Okay, cool. And now we have something that happens all the time, right? And this is why I chose this. And this is great. So we have C, D flat diminished, D minor 7th, G7th, right? Now, we also know that D flat diminished also equals C sharp diminished, right? I probably would have written it C sharp. And the reason why is, as if you're reading anything, it's always easier to think of it C sharp, right? D, G. Like I said, you see this stuff all the time, and you don't even think about it. I wouldn't be thinking about it if I was, if I wasn't talking about it right now. But super important, like, so if you're going down, say it's like, right, you always want to make it as easy to read as possible. I would never do, I would always do E minor 7, E flat diminished, D minor 7, G7. Right, not D sharp. It's like confusing, right? E flat, D, right? So like another thing along the way. Now check this out, right? The only chord we haven't done here, you have options. You have C, sixth, or sorry, C6-9 or C6 up here, right? Let's just talk about it from right here. And this is how I have it written in the example. Let me just check something really quick. Yep, so you have, here's like two options, right? Okay, so you got C6-9, right? C sharp diminished, D flat diminished. I call it C sharp, right? Because we're going up, like I said. Right, so great chord. And what that is that's kind of a that diminished chord to me, and we can talk about more about this like next week or something, is really an A7th chord, right? So you hear this all the time in jazz music, like it kind of started almost with like rhythm changes, but you hear, right? So G or C, 6, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, right? Sometimes it's just a little bit hipper sounding. Put the C sharp in the bass. But really, this is a C sharp diminished. If you pull back a finger, that's an A7th, right? That's one of the 16 inversions. Right, so essentially that's what it is. And then to G7th, right? But anyways, the diminished chord, just real quick, it'd be second finger on the 4th fret of the 5th string, and then third finger, 5th fret, 4th string, first finger, 3rd fret, 3rd string, pinky finger, 5th fret, 2nd string, right? Now, right, you can use your guide finger. Pretty much, your second finger for the roots of them, right? Boom, 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 right? Then D minor. Now you can do choices too. Like I said, experiment with them all. Right? Like the whole point, it's like, so we're getting through the, we know that this tune is A, B, or BA form. And a lot of tunes, like I said, are the same. So you're going to see a lot of this. In the more examples that that are, you complete, you have muscle memory over, the better off you are, right? All right, guys, let's move into, Chris, let's go to, if you would please, let's go to chord choices example 4. And then we'll go to the chart, right? So this one, guys, now we're in minor land, right? So this is the minor 2-5. Okay. So really, look, we've gone over a lot of the major stuff, which is great. This is another one, and this is one great move that I really like. So We have E half diminished. Now, notice, that could have said minor 7, flat 5, like we talked about in the beginning, but it's the circle with the slash, right? It's the good old shorthand. The half diminished chord, right? So you can see you have 7, 8, 7, 8, right? Kind of makes it easy. I've always thought like they're stacked like that. First finger, third, second, and pinky, right? 7th fret, 5th string. And then a 7th, right? So, and what this is they call it a minor 2-5 because it's going to a minor chord, right? So, I mean, I kind of like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's just this, but like that's kind of the minor side of it to me. And you know, this is obviously the happier one, right? You know, that would be an example of, you know, a 3 half diminished to a 6, a 2 minor to a 5, to a 1 in C, right? That would be like in, you know, the key of C. But, you know, sometimes when you see a lot of minor 2-5s, I feel like they sort of, not always, but, you know, they can sort of, if it's in a minor key, just you can count on having those. And then, obviously, you know, learn how to solo over that. But like I said, this is a great choice. You have that, and you have this one. But also, here's the thing about charts, guys, right? Like, that's pretty high, you know, even tonally. That's lower, so it's good to sort of stay out of the way. Like I said, there's that, and then your A7th, right? With either one of these fingers, like I've been showing you. Works either way, right? But, like I said, if you're always thinking ahead, you can use your D minor 7th like that next, right? So, guide finger. So that's nice, right? One more thing, and this is another usage of the 2-5. This is another usage of the 2-5 in major, but also on the different set of strings. Is if you look at those chord examples, right, and go to G minor 7, C 7th, and then there's your F6 with the C in the bass again, right? That's another good one. And we kind of talked about that. We use those in some of the examples in week 1. But just to recap, you know, that's... right? Or, no, I had it written like that. So, a G minor 7th, like I said, it's a way cooler... You can do this. You know, it's not wrong, but it's not as hip, right? So, like I said, all these kind of ways, you know, to play these chords just work a lot better. Right? So there's your G minor 7th, right? And like I said, I always, when I'm, especially for reading this stuff off the page, I find like these kind of voicings, there's so like minimal movement. And I mean, I know at first, like getting the muscle memory and all that, that's a little bit difficult, but you know, by knowing that, you know, it just kind of makes it a piece of cake. Chris, if we could now bring up, it's labeled example for reading charts, right? All right, so like I said, guys, different, you know, has like a C part, right? You see that, you know, use your ears, pay attention to the page, right? But like to kind of put all this together, you know, you'd have E half diminished, A7th, D minor, right? Back to our other chord choice, you go to D7, you know, G minor 7th, C 7th, F. Like I said, I just love how easy that is. When you're already having to think and read or whatever, I'm all about the easy. So that, right? And then you have right, B flat, right, A7, moving back, guide fingers, all about the guide fingers. Now this is something else that we talked about, right? And you see this everywhere. Is, oh well, A7 flat 9. I'm just going to throw my flat 9 in there. Now, generally, yes, like that, if just a quick, like, I'm going to improvise for a second, and that flat 9 exists, but not everybody likes that sound. Like, some people will play more of an altered scale type sound with, like, a natural 9 or something. And if you're hammering down on the chord with, that, it can be like, don't, just play the, what, like I said, when in doubt, leave it out. All about that, the guide fingers, the proximity, just with note choices and chord choices, like I said, it just makes life easy, right? So yeah, if we're on the B part, right, you'd have D minor, G minor like that, right? I like to jump up there and do that. A7. D minor 7. Here's another one, right? G7 sharp 11. I mean, it's a great chord, but what if on the solo, and this is where the problem lies with this kind of stuff, right? And why I always say, and in doubt, leave it out, is what if the soloist is playing a fifth, and then you're hammering right here, and you're in the same register? You're going to get this sound, right? Especially if it's like, say it is something like horn, and it's like, and he's leaning in on it, and it's just not cool, right? So I just do straight G7th, right? Now remember too, here you're kind of putting it all together. You're seeing the different symbols. This is standard real book stuff, but like I said, this is sort of my approach. Like I always just leave all the extra stuff out. You're back up to E7, right? And now you're back at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Right. E half diminished A7th and 2. That split bar. Now you're going to take the second ending, right? D minor, G7th, B flat, A7, right? Now check this out, right? This is kind of another funny one here. D minor, B7, which I would never use that voicing, right? That's why I'm just letting you hear it, but there's the ending of it, right? Check this out, right? D minor, guide finger, guys. That pinky, like I said, is your best friend, right? A7, or sorry, B7, kind of like the same exact voicing as we should with the A7th. B flat. Here's like I said earlier too with the speed. Say, the tune is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're moving that fast, right, you're not having to go, like, especially if you're reading it for the first time, right? A little pressure under there, somebody says, hey, kick it off. Rather than being, which those voicings don't sound as cool, but here's the other problem with that, in my opinion, right? You have to move around a bunch. And it's like, what if you overshoot, and you play completely, you play a C chord and the bass player is playing he's playing a B like you should be, So that's why, like I said, with reading charts and stuff, learning all these little tricks or along the way and stuff, I think it helps a lot. Right. Cool. Chris, let's pull up I know we're about out of time. Let's just pull up for fun, just rather than talking about the chord choices. I think it's number... Just pull up example 2 reading charts. It's the G minor one. And here's, guys, look at it like this, right? These are 3 different, examples. And just by knowing a few of those chords and how they move, I mean, it just makes life so much easier, right? Here's another perfect example of like what I was saying. G minor. Well, what kind of G minor? At first, if I see that, I'm probably just going to play a straight G minor, and probably my choice would be, something like this. Because it's safe, but like I said, take the examples, and learn them all and look at other stuff, and you'll come across this stuff time and time again, right? But then listen, like if like I said, I never played this tune or whatever. If it's like a gypsy jazz kind of thing, I'm probably going to use a minor 6 chord because that's that sound, But But at first, if you don't know, like I said, it's important to just stick straight, right? And what you should do is like look at this, like this is our last one here for today, but then figure out, okay, cool. Well, if you're already up there, the proximity thing is great. Like if I'm just reading this, I'm probably just going to use my guide finger, jump down to that D7th like that, right? Sorry. Right, and then you're sticking on that, right? So if we were to go from the beginning of the A section, you'd have, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, D7, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Right, second ending. B flat, all guide finger. Bum, bum, bum. 1, 2. You can use your guide finger, jump down to G7th like this. Leave it out. C7th is totally fine. F13, well, I'm just going to play an F7th like that, right? When in doubt, leave it out. Here's the same move we did earlier in C, right? But down here, so you can go. We didn't cover this one today, but we can in other lessons. So yeah, like I said, guys, I mean, the best thing to do is just to dive in and look through all the examples I have in the chords. But knowing to just leave certain things out, all the color tones and everything, and kind of get you in good shape. And like I said, that's stuff that you would totally want to do on your own. Okay, we had a question here. Well, let's see. I mean, I'm actually not, Grant Green, first of all, great big tone. Grant Green is kind of like what they would call soul jazz. So, and he can play jazz, all right. I mean, but he definitely had a very bluesy approach, like. Very bluesy, big tone. I think I always heard Grant Green just kind of turned up like a lot of the that like Joe Pass is, absolute virtuoso solo player for sure. Fantastic. But check out his, obviously anything virtuoso is the name of the album. That's great. But definitely more bebop land. And I guess Jack Wilkins is kind of on the cusp of that, but Joe kind of gets all over the place. I always heard too, like with Joe, I think his dad was a guitar player, and he told him, he said, just fill all the space you can, because it's crazy. Like if you were to play like a tune in G, and he's just everywhere. Like and it's amazing. Like some of the his chord choices and his scales and everything. But yeah, he's definitely comes from. I would say that's probably the difference in him. Grant Green's definitely bluesier. Joe Pass is definitely more bebop. Jack Wilkins, I guess, is kind of in the middle. Yeah, and that would go for the approach, I guess. Learn from all three of them. Transcribe something and build a solo. Like I said, Grant Green would be more of a definitely. Whereas Joe's, I guess Jack Wilkins somewhere in the middle. But I hope that helps. Check out their, just check out a bunch of their records. They're all great players. All right, guys. Well, let's see here. Next week, I believe we have. Let's wrap it up here. I think we have intros and outros next week, so that should be cool. Yep, we have intros and outros. So I'm gonna kind of talk about how that works. This is very common where somebody will say, hey, play the last 8 bars to get us into the tune. That's a great one. That's easy, especially you have the chart in front of you. Just go, all right, count last 8 bars, good to go, right? Like All of Me is a great example, for that. Right? But but then there's stuff like this that happens. Tune kicks, right? But that's going to be kind of the stuff we're gonna come across next week. I'll probably, I'm going to show you guys some, just some cool foolproof ones that work for lots of tunes and kind of on any occasion. So, all right, yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Come on by next week. Like I said, you have all the supplemental material and stuff with all the chords, and like I said, I think you'll notice a lot of patterns with some of these chord shapes and stuff. But the most challenging thing, it's a lot. You definitely want to do some stuff on your own, but just pull out the book, man, and just start reading through stuff, and do it for 15 minutes every day, and you'll definitely see all the symbols that we talked about, and you'll kind of just use a lot of the chords I showed you, and you'll totally you'll be playing through charts great. All right, y'all. Thanks.